Hi, welcome to Nicky's Vlogs. There is an art to applying the science of presenting. So we're quite big on the science of presenting. There is lots of science. In fact, science for us falls into two categories, really. There's the cognitive psychology. How does the brain work? How do we get people to focus attention on the things we want them to focus attention on instead of checking their BlackBerry or their iPhone? And then behavioral psychology. So how do we persuade people to our point of view if it's a sales presentation, or how do we scaffold their learning and help them achieve the learning objectives if it's a training presentation? Both require an understanding of either sales psychology or learning psychology, and all of that's underpinned by the cognitive psychology. And the research has been going on since 1860. James, a guy in North America, actually was a politician, not a psychologist, but he said memory was two different things, long-term memory and short-term memory. We now know that's a gross oversimplification. We know that long-term memory isn't just one thing. You have, at least 4 different subclasses. You have an episodic memory or flashbulb memory where you remember very specific things, where you proposed or where you got proposed to, or the things that made a big difference, what was happening when your first child was born. That's an episodic memory. Then you've got a declarative memory where you remember facts and figures and names and all of those kind of stuff. That's mostly where we're aiming for with the presentation. We're aiming to get into people's declarative memory, because then we can influence their buying decisions and influence their behavior. Sometimes the way into that is with a flashbulb episodic memory. That's what happened with this. I turned up in front of my staff dressed as a girl for the first time in order to have them remember a message. So the shock of seeing me in a dress is the episodic memory, but what I wanted was to go into their declarative memory, which was the message: stop thinking of me as daddy, wait till you get home, you're in trouble. Think of me as mummy. Have you got your pack lunch? Have you got your schedule? My job as a chief executive is to make you successful. It's not to bollock you for getting it wrong. Go out, make mistakes, and then call mummy and I'll come fix it. Now that's the message I wanted in the declarative memory. In order to get it there, we made it into a flashbulb episodic memory and pushed it in. Then, of course, you've got your procedural memory, the memory where you remember how to drive a car or do things that you do kind of physically. That physical memory is called a procedural memory. That's your long-term memory. We now know short-term memory is not, we don't use the word short-term memory anymore. We use the word working memory, but we know that working memory is also subclass. You've got your central executive, and underneath that, you've got your different modalities, different processing systems, so your modalities. And in the presentation, we're interested in 2 of those, predominantly sight and sound. And under sight, we're interested in what's called the phonological loop, which is the bit where you rehearse language in your head and you think about the sounds and the words. And then you've got your visuospatial scratch pad, where you think of pictures and imagine things visually. And what we're trying to do, of course, is get both processing the same information together, so you get both hemispheres of the brain working together, and you get the idea. There's a lot of science now, but there's so much science, sometimes there's quite a finesse to putting it all together into a presentation. There's a lot going on to combine it all so that you A, get people's attention, and B, get them to remember the information you want, and then have that sit in their long-term memory so that when they need it, they apply it and you change their behavior. And it's a lie to think that just knowing the science makes you a great presenter. You also need to put it all together and package it in a way that makes it compelling and interesting. And that's the art. Probably 2 sides. There's the graphic art of making it all look pretty. There's the performance art of actually standing in front of pulling your people together. And really, a good presentation is a combination of the art and the science pulled together into a compelling bit of video. Thanks for watching. Bye.